Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Juju Show, episode number 51. I am in my new secret bunker location, my summertime travel home, also known as my RV or caravan for folks who do caravanning. So if I have any connection issues today, I need you guys to help me out and go, Rick, you're having issues, downgrade your video, turn off your video, stuff like that, because I'm on mobile internet. But it seems to be holding up okay this morning. Oh, look, and they're still flooding in. Woohoo! Awesome. So with that, I'm your host, Rick, from the Juju Engineering team, and we have a whole slew of guests today because we're going to talk about some awesome getting a lowdown on what open Mano is, which for some reason for me always makes me think of like a shark. I want to go Mako or something, I think. I don't know what it is whenever I hear it. But let's go around and say hi. Adam, you've been here, but not for a while. How you doing, Adam?
Yeah, good, thanks. I'm Adam Israel. I'm a technical lead with the Solutions QA team, and I've been working with the open source Mano project now for probably about 3 years since our initial involvement. So I've been here since day one.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the Juju Show. Arno, how you doing? Can you hear us? Are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you're out traveling today.
I am actually just at the airport going back to Madrid. So my name is Arno. I run a field engineering team focused on telecommunications customers in EMEA and APAC.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show. David, how you doing, smiley face?
Hey, how are you? I'm David. I'm a developer of a canonical distribution of OSM.
All right. Awesome. Welcome. And Dominique.
Hi, I'm Dominic. I'm also a developer for the canonical distribution of OSM. And yeah, I'm kind of new here in canonical, only 3 months, but yeah.
Welcome to the party. We'll have to have you on some more of these things then. All right. So let's start with our community news. First up, in release news, we have the 2.6.4 release of Juju on its way. It's going through QA Solutions right now, and we're looking to get a go, no go for the release today. So hopefully, if you're watching this later, like say tomorrow, Juju 2.6.4 will be out and ready for you to use. A highlight that I wanted to bring up is that, and we talked about it 2 weeks ago in the Juju show around using trust support in bundles. So this is the first release that fully supports that. It allows you to export bundles which have trusted applications in them, like the integrator charms and such. And it allows you to then deploy those bundles with the trust flag and skip some of that manual steps that you had to do with some of these things going forward. So if you deploy a lot of CDK, or if you deploy things that work with the integrator charms, on any substrate, this is probably something that you'll find really handy. So keep an eye out, watch for that snap upgrade, and make sure that you get your new Juju, get things upgraded and have fun. Oh, sorry, as I choke on my coffee this morning. One thing I did want to highlight with this is that we're also with this going to have a Python libjuju release, and the Juju team has been trying to make sure that we more tightly integrate with PyLibjuju. So the trust support has been added to both the underlying client in Go that you get from your snap, but also we made sure to add support to it to the libjuju side of things. So if you're using the Python client, you'll also get it in the same release cadence. And we're looking to make sure that we start to bring those into alignment so that when you get a new version of Juju, there will also be a release of the client to go with it, kind of in a same day release stream, making sure that the library has the support for the things that have been added. So what I want to do is encourage folks to check out the library, provide some feedback, what's missing. Obviously, we're going to slowly be kind of integrating new stuff in as we do it, but trying to bring some of the historical stuff up to speed with it. So if there's anything in there that you're finding that you have issues with or doesn't help you with or whatnot, make sure to file issues and reach out to us and let us know. We want to make sure that everyone has the ability to build their own tools and scripts and things on top of Juju with a library that looks like it belongs, right? And fits nice and tight. So give that a try, and you should see that more in the future, that kind of tighter integration there. Cool. Do you guys use libjuju for any of your stuff, gentlemen? You're automating your CI or anything with it?
heavily. It's actually a primary component in our integration into OSM.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, there you go. So this is probably good news for you all.
Yeah.
All right. The next up, wanted to bring up a warning that there is a change for you charm authors out there in the default behavior of the layer basic, the basic layer. Seems that there was some sort of conflict with pip and system package inclusion in the building of the charms. And so the behavior is changing to not include system packages by default. If you want that, you have to go set that option to true in order to keep the old behavior. So just be aware that if you've got a charm that is leveraging system packages, system Python packages to be explicit, watch out for this change because it may bite you where suddenly it stops working and you don't realize why. And it's just the kind of thing that, you know, this was a change. It was announced a while ago and you get disconnected from when you actually see the error or the failure. So this is just my chance to kind of, you know, toot from the horn a little bit. Watch out, charmers, watch out. Make sure to check your dependencies and how you're getting them with your charm and the layer basic. And lastly, I wanted to highlight something that's been a recent change to Juju that folks may not be aware of. It is just to kind of spread the word, and that is there was a posted discourse around someone who had cloud credentials that had become invalid, and they had updated and gotten new ones, but then had issues getting their models updated because all the models were choking and dying, saying, hey, your credentials aren't valid. Because if the credentials Juju uses to talk to the cloud don't work, then we can't do things like add units and change firewall rules and leverage all the underlying cloud APIs that we need to operate. Now, fortunately, there's been a lot of work put into credentials lately. I think Anastasia from the Juju team's done a lot of great work here. And what you can do is there's a update credential command, which will allow you to basically take a credential that's in the system and give it new values. And then that will help you update to more valid credentials, and Juju will update itself, sanity check, make sure that everything's working, and then brings it back into play where your model can now operate appropriately as it's supposed to. So just be aware. I think this person in Discord started out by doing a bunch of kind of manual hackerifoo, and Anastasia points out that if you use the update credential command, you can actually just kind of update them in place instead of setting to new values and more manual process that this person went through. So keep an eye on that, something to think about. It's one of those that you don't need it until you need it kind of things, because until your credentials have issues, you just, you know, everything's working fine. You know, I've got a couple of clouds where I have credentials that go back a long way, and I don't really think about it much, but, you know, others that rotate more or that I've had to clean up and generate new ones, it's always good to remember that. So always, you know, it helps keep that uptime on your controller going nice and smooth when you're not redeploying things because of credential issues. That is the interesting news for the show today. You guys have anything else you want to highlight or bring up? No? Alrighty then. Then let's dive into main topic time. And the main topic today, all of you work on OSM in some capacity or other. So let's start with OSM. I understand stands for open source Mano. So what in the world's Mano? I know what open source is. I don't know what Mano is.
It's one of those lovely acronyms that's popular in the community. It is, and I'm double checking it because I don't always remember. It is an orchestration stack for managing virtualized network functions, along with virtual machines and virtual infrastructure. So it takes like OpenStack and on top of a VNF manager and then an orchestrator, and orchestrates the deployment of these virtualized network functions on top of the Vim, and does all of the complicated repeatable bits to help telcos stand up clouds or 5G networks or edge units.
So this is sort of a standard for delivering software on top of cloudy bits, like be it an OpenStack or maybe a MAS or some kind of underlying cloud of some sort.
Exactly.
That sounds a lot like what Juju does.
It does. And that's part of why we are aligned with the project, is because there's a lot of things that Juju does that complements what the Mano is trying to accomplish.
Okay.
But there are things.
You
There's a language that is very telco specific. There are, like, I've seen white papers that are just like 100 pages of just acronyms that are very specific to telco. And mean sometimes different things than we would normally expect them when we would talk. So what open source Mono does is it takes all those things, and then Juju fits in there as a component to handle a very specific part of the orchestration.
How would you describe, or what's the specific part?
So we handle specifically the
concrete
it's a little different than the way that we would normally work with Juju, where Juju doesn't actually handle the resource orchestration. That's handled in a separate process within OSM. It's divided into modules. Where we come into play is through this. We have Juju integrated using libjuju, and then we have a translator module called N2VC, which is network service to VNF communication. And it basically drives libjuju to deploy containers that handle the configuration elements of an NFV. So these configuration elements are everything from, like, if you have a 5G network, you have subscribers and you have bandwidth limits and quotas and different properties for your subscribers and how the network performs. We handle the configuration side of that. So all of the hooks that we do really, really well for, making all of that repeatable, that's the portion that Juju handles. The difference is that those machines that we have essentially what we call proxy charms that run inside LXC containers. And those communicate with a virtual machine that's been spun up in the infrastructure by another component within OSM.
Okay.
So it's a hybrid for what we would normally think of Juju doing.
Gotcha. Do we have a concrete example? Actually, I'm going to ask my first dumb question. You mentioned both VNF and NFV. I've always been confused. What's the difference between the two? They seem so close and similar as far as the actual words at play here.
They are really. It's a matter of at what level that they are deployed.
Okay.
So you have a network service, which is sort of a top level. We kind of compare it to a model, but really a network service can also be a charm. It just handles things at a higher level abstraction. And then VNFs are components that virtualize a specific network function, but those VNFs can also be made up of virtual deployment units, VDUs, which are also charms. So you can have a model with a bunch of charms that they're effectively doing the same thing and they're managing a single component, but the higher level system thinks of them as different things. One is the VDU because it's handling a subset of a VNF, and then there's multiple VNFs that make up the network service.
This sounds a little bit kind of like a subordinate with a charm situation, where you could very well deploy a firewall, but a firewaller may also be part of another charm where it's providing firewall services to something else.
Yeah.
So it can live at kind of both layers, be it a component of something or an actual service of something. Does that sound about right? Am I understanding you there?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So I hear you guys may or may not have a demo of some sort. You got something interesting that we can kind of put this in concrete terms and kind of get a look at what we're talking about here in physical form of some sort?
Yeah, so David has something prepared that he could be able to share his screen. And so let me tell you a little bit about what we're doing recently with the project.
Sure.
Traditionally, it's been installed the last 2 releases through Docker containers and just a setup script. And we've been actually turning that into a distribution that runs on Kubernetes. So we've taken to writing Kubernetes charms for each of the components within OSM and each of the components that it depends on, things like Zookeeper and Kafka, MariaDB, and turning that into a proper distribution with support that we'll be able to offer to the system integrators for these telecommunication companies. So that's what we're going to show you.
So interesting. So we can basically have almost a CDK of OSM on Kubernetes terms, basically a deployed bundle of this is a standard set of tools put together in the specific way, like you mentioned, like a 5G deployment on an edge Kubernetes cluster somewhere or something.
Right. So today, like, we might deploy OpenStack, and then we'd deploy CDK on top of OpenStack, and then we would deploy OSM alongside CDK, and configure it to use CDK, and then on top of the OpenStack and the CDK, then we can deploy network services.
All right, a little technical support here. Oh, here we go. David's got it. Let me hit the present button here. All right, little small. If we can zoom in or make the terminal smaller or something, kind of, it's a little tall right now, maybe. Try to scope it down a little bit. Oh, that looks a lot better. Where are we at here? Let's see. Yay. I can read that now. Thank you. You're muted, David, just as a heads up in case you're trying to speak to us as you adjust your screen and such.
Yeah, sorry. Can you see it properly now?
Yeah, no, that looks great to me, yeah.
Okay, now the our distribution of OSM is in the process of installing, so we can see here all the charms. That each one of those is one component of OSM, and yeah, it's like a normal bundle deployment, but with using Kate charms.
Awesome. So these are all running on a Kubernetes that well, it actually looks like it's running in a microcates that you set up locally. Yep. So good plug for microcates there, for you can actually develop this for
absolutely.
It's kind of interesting to be able to develop a deployment for, you know, an edge out somewhere, but you can do it locally with a microcates install on your local desktop and have confidence that things are going to work properly.
Yeah, one of our goals is to be able to have a micro distribution. So a developer can deploy microcates. We're kind of doing some work to test and evaluate microstack.
Okay.
And then
we should probably mention that's a we'll call it in-flight development idea around could we take microcates and actually scale it across multiple machines.
OpenStack.
Oh, or sorry, microstack. Oh, my bad. Wrong one. Yes, microstack being the lightweight mini version of like an OpenStack APIs. It's not like a really fully running like OpenStack, but gives you enough of it to develop against an OpenStack.
Yeah. So we'd like to be able to turn that into a single machine install that gives you everything you need, because traditionally you need to have an OpenStack installed somewhere before you can even get started with OSM.
And I can say that's not always the easiest, most trivial thing to do. So microstack would be an awesome way to go about doing that.
Yeah.
Cool. So looking at your list of charms here, could you speak to some of the ones that maybe folks don't normally run into, like LCM, ManoDB? There's a few here that I'm guessing are related to your list of acronyms that are that telco space that maybe folks wouldn't actually think or kind of be aware of.
Sure.
What are we looking at here?
So the ones you see, the LCM, MON, NBI, PAL, RO, and UI, those are all mapped to modules within OSM. So all of those handle some specific core functionality within the open source Mano project.
So this is kind of like the equivalent of like we talk about OpenStack, but OpenStack's actually made up of Nova and Keystone and Noki and an array of different services that all pulled together to provide the microservice architecture of the actual, in this case, of an OSM.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
I think a lot of inspiration initially was pulled from OpenStack as a project. So everything is meant to be very modular. If we decide as a community that a certain module isn't meeting the needs of the community anymore, we could drop in a replacement for it, and everything would still work. And then you have things that you probably recognize like Zookeeper and Prometheus and Kafka and Grafana, Keystone for authentication. The MonoDB and VimDB you'll actually see are actually instances of MariaDB, 2 different databases.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So you're using it. It's another case where it's really cool to be able to have a charm and deploy it with different names in the same model in order to leverage it for different purposes or whatnot. Yeah. You could have different configuration and stuff on it. I think it's one of those things that's underutilized. Sometimes people think, oh, I can put a database here or put a thing here. I know we had a case recently where there was a bit of a bug where they had a memcache and they wanted to update it and use it on more places. And the short-term answer for an upgrade scenario was just deploy another memcache.
Right.
Deploy one with certain set of settings and data for this purpose, and then one for that purpose. And nothing says you can't have multiple of them out there providing services across the model. So cool. That's interesting. So all this comes up and it's running. Where do the actual VNF side, like what is this actually going to get me or do for me?
So this will bring you to a running OSM installation. OSM itself offers 2 tools for working with VNFs. One is a CLI command for integrating with it via northbound interface, and then there's also a user interface that will do a subset of that functionality.
So it seems a little bit like an OpenStack in the sense that people deploy and they bring up an OpenStack and then they're like, now what? Exactly. And the answer is now you throw work at it. You create VMs and you do things. And so an OSM kind of comes up and it's like, well, what do you do with it? Well, you throw work at it, or you throw VNFs at it, or it doesn't, unfortunately, doesn't demo awesome, right? Because it doesn't actually have like a bunch of moving parts right out of the box. It's kind of like a system that you can then leverage to throw things at. Do you guys have a sample demo kind of VNF or anything that you would throw at this, or how would, I guess, would we use Juju against this in some fashion?
No, we wouldn't use Juju against this. It's all driven through the OSM CLI.
Okay.
We use the Juju commands for basically for diagnostics and verify, yes, things are running the way they're supposed to, everything is healthy.
Right.
There's an internal component used by the LCM that talks to Juju that's going over the libjuju. So that'll be the driver. So everything is driven through a northbound API, and then we'll call back in and southbound and drive Juju that way.
So the libjuju work, what types of things are you all doing with the libjuju then on that side?
So that's been pretty interesting work. We don't integrate with libjuju directly from OSM. We actually have a translator layer called NTVC. And the reason for that is because there is a lot of telco-specific language. When we refer to a model, in OSM, we refer to that as the network service, which is just an encapsulation. So we have this translator module that uses language familiar to OSM and its community, and then under the covers translates that into to libjuju.
Because somewhere out there is a giant standards doc, right? Like that basically defines a bunch of standards, and what you guys are doing is you're implementing the standard and then mapping that to Jujuisms. But like you say, you need that translation layer to speak to and relate to the actual standard as defined, so that folks will, you can talk to them and go, hey, look, we implement the standard, or here's, how we can talk to you, and we all talk the same because we're speaking to I always like to say, I kind of give a little bit of a laugh, right? The quote unquote standard, because it's that kind of, hey, you talk HTTP, I talk HTTP, but how come we're not talking to each other? Well, we didn't actually implement it the same exact way,
Yeah. So what I should also mention is that OSM is hosted by ETSI, which is the European Telecommunications Standards Institute. So they're a body with wide support globally that define what the standard looks like. They have research bodies and industry experts that sit down and define these very, very detailed and meaty specs. And OSM is the open source implementation of their Mano spec. There's
gotcha.
Yeah, so standards are a very big thing, especially in the telco space. Everything has a standard.
Okay, cool. So you guys are translating. What are we looking at here on the screen here? Is this a dashboard or something from the running Mano install here?
Yeah, this is the lightweight user interface, which you'd see in the Juju screen as the UI. And this is just a pretty lightweight dashboard that allows you to get an overview of what's running on the system. Allows you to onboard network descriptors and VNFs, which are the packages that include charms, and to instantiate those things. And you'll see on the sidebar, it has things like net slices, NS instances, PDUs. They have there's a new feature for physical deployment units, so deploying physical hardware. In a way, it's kind of like MAS, where you already have some existing hardware that you want to utilize. And this might be switches, and that's a way to take advantage of those devices.
Okay. Cool then. Is there anything else in particular you guys wanted to talk about or share as far as what's going on in the discourse? You guys are talking about material on bringing this up or whatnot.
Yeah.
Anything in particular folks should start reading there, or you guys are looking for folks to try out or play with?
Yeah, so we're just our distribution is still in the early stages. We've released sort of a beta of it in the discourse. There's some instructions there for getting started, so you can install the work in progress. We're in the process of hammering out things like how do you do HA for these kind of components, and the fun part of getting HA is to shoot those units in the head and see the system still running. So we have a discourse where we're beginning that documentation. You can deploy it on OSM on AWS. We've done extensive testing with our OpenStack, of course. We've got some training materials in there for writing Kubernetes charms.
So interesting. So you mentioned deploying OSM on AWS or OpenStack, but you guys were showing it on Kubernetes. You're saying you can use the AWS the Kubernetes service there, or are we talking about non-Kubernetes install of OSM?
So release 6 of OSM is actually coming out today or tomorrow. It doesn't have support for deploying its workloads to Kubernetes yet. In this release of the distribution and the upstream OSM, you can run OSM on top of Kubernetes, but it still requires an OpenStack or
for the actual VNFs that you're
for the actual
workloads
VNFs
that you're running. Gotcha.
Release 7, which will be about 6 months. One of the targets is to run workloads on Kubernetes.
Awesome.
So you'd be able to have one Kubernetes stack to both run your OSM stack and to run your workloads.
Much more edge-friendly setup on that one.
Yeah, because one of the goals is to really be able to push edge. It's obviously very, very important to the telcos. So you could literally spin up multiple Kubernetes stacks in your edge environment and run your workloads there, so they're closer to the user.
Awesome, that makes sense.
Yeah. So we'd love people if they want to come to the discourse and try installing it. There's some resources for getting started. The OSM documentation itself, which we'll add some links to in the discourse, There's a lot of examples that you can use to test out OSM to see what it's actually doing and actually see something running.
Cool.
So we're building that documentation now as we speak.
So it'd be interesting. I'd be curious to hear if any community folks are playing with building VNF solutions, and this might be a really handy way to get an open Mano to develop against, to QA against, play on, and everything. So there's a little bit of what's the term? Inside baseball. If you need it, you know you need it, and if you don't know you need it, you probably don't. But I do think what I think is really cool is just I like how we're proving once again about Juju's ability to model a complex moving system, and this time being able to move that model of a microservice kind of multi-part deployment and operate it over time, but now moving it onto a set of Kubernetes services and modeling that is interesting as well. Yeah. So we can put it on the list of Kubernetes deployment of all the different services that go into that, and OpenStack, all the services that go into that, the big data space where we have a lot of microservice, although I know we can say micro with a grain of salt, service with all the lovely Java components that go into a nice big data setup. And here's just another one, a telco stack. So
yeah. And the last thing I'd add too about OSM is traditionally telcos are very change resistant. A lot of their hardware is very vendored. So they will have all their VNFs, all their hardware, all from the same vendor. It's really, they have a lot of lock-in. And one of the goals of OSM was to disrupt that model so that you could have vendor interoperability. You weren't locked into specific hardware. You weren't locked into a specific data center. You really had the flexibility to do what you want to do and take advantage of the cloud.
Awesome. Yeah, no, definitely. I think vendor neutral choice, the ability, just like in your own components, right? If a certain component doesn't do its job anymore, something better comes along, you want to be able to grab the best of breed tool for solve your problems and not have the cost of re-implementing the whole thing all across. So that's awesome. It's exciting to see telcos modernizing a bit there with the modern software practices a bit more. So. All right, then. Well, then let's leave it there. And if you guys are interested, go check out the discourse category for OSM and let us know what you're doing with it. I'd be curious to kind of hear. It's kind of new, a little bit of a new world from myself here. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining. Everyone, have a good day. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks, Adam, David, and Dominic.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.